That's my report.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Patrick McDonough, and I'm here today to relate an experience that happened to me in September of 1966. It's 44 years ago, but that experience was so significant, it was basically burned in my memory. I haven't forgotten about it at all. But I am getting older, and I did want to put this experience and relate it on the record. A little background on me: I had enlisted in the Air Force in Berkeley, California in the first week of November 1962. At the onset of the Cuban Missile Crisis, it was going. I felt patriotic. And up to that time, I had been studying engineering in college. I had 3 years of engineering. And the Air Force, considering my background, trained me to be a geodetic surveyor. And I was assigned to 1381st Geodetic Survey Squadron in Orlando, Florida. We basically, in 1965, we moved to Warren Air Force Base in Wyoming. On average, I would spend 9-10 months a year on temporary duty, surveying for latitude and longitude at our missile sites and aircraft bases for positioning missile and aircraft guidance systems. Basically, the squadron's mission was to provide precise geographical coordinates for a missile or an aircraft inertial guidance system, so that the missile or aircraft would know exactly precisely where it was at when it takes off, while the intelligence agencies would provide the targeting information. In early September of 1966, myself and two other airmen, Airman First Class Al Kramer and Airman Third Class Charlie Coates, we were temporarily assigned to Malmstrom Air Force Base, and were ordered to provide or perform the initial geodetic surveys for the last 50 missile sites there. There already was 150 Minuteman I sites, and we were putting in the last 50 for the wing. And basically, we were assigned to the Site Activation Task Force they call SATAF. It was Boeing, really, the prime contractor. We were given a government truck, no radio, anything in it. I was the chief of party. I was the observer on our small three-man team. Al was the recorder. Charlie was, we were trying to train him both in observing and recording. We normally would arrive at a missile site at about in early evening. We'd set up our instruments, and basically what I was doing was the star observation to provide precise latitude and longitude. On the night of this incident that happened, we were completing a series of what we call celestial astro-azimuth observations southeast of Conrad, and I was doing the observing, Al was recording, and Charlie was assisting Al with the chronometer on the time hacks as I tipped on Polaris. The unusual thing about this missile site I was at was that the blast hatch of the silo was open, and that was very unusual. Normally when I'd go to these missile sites, even though they were not activated yet with a missile, they were always closed. The monoliths were there. We do 4 monoliths and do a precise quadrangle, and the work we did was very precise. It involved a lot of, it was basically all using star shots. And so here's a site that we arrive at, and the blast hatch is open. And we're nearing completion of the star observations. We had been to the other 3 monoliths, and I was at the monolith at the next to the hatch. And it was probably about 1:30, and a unidentified flying object came from the north and stopped right over us. I would say it was probably about altitude of 300 feet or so, maybe a little higher. It's a little hard to tell in the dark. It was round. It had, I would estimate its diameter at about 50 feet, kind of like a pretty large, like a wingspan of a B-52, something in that range. It's pretty large. It seemed to have pulsating lights going around it, and it had a white light from the center looking down into the silo. There was no wind, there was no noise. It only stayed there maybe 20, 30 seconds at most. And then I just remember, I'm staring up at the stars, right? I'm a pretty keen observer of what's above me here in the celestial sphere up there. And I just said to myself, what if this thing beams us up and takes us off to some distant place and never return to Earth again? I mean, this is going through my head here while this thing's above me. And then from this dead stop, it shoots off to the east, just like now you see it, now you don't. It just, phew. So after this UFO departs, I grabbed my instrument and jumped in the truck behind the steering wheel, and off we went. And we weren't about to be there if it came back. We didn't have guards with us because there was no missile. We didn't have a radio because we're not really in contact with the Air Force Base. I don't know any of this other stuff is even going on, to be honest with you. I mean, we're just kind of out there on our own doing these sites and mailing our material back. It was wasn't even aware there was a UFO problem per se. But as it turned out, the night's events weren't totally over with us at that point. As we sped away and on our way back to Conrad, and the Army Corps of Engineers had base rocked all the roads to take the weight of these missiles they were bringing in. And of course, these are new sites, and they took down all the signs to make the roads wider. And I go over the hill and come down, the headlights come down, there's no road there at Teed, And so I tried to make you either went to the right or left. I tried to go to the left towards Conrad, and the truck flipped over, and we ended up upside down. Fortunately, none of us were hurt. We walked probably about 2 hours to the nearby farmhouse, if you call that nearby, and called the Montana Highway Patrol. The farmer drove us back to the accident site, and it was interesting when the highway patrolman arrived, because we told him, how did this occur? He was asking us, and I told him that his dispatch had told him there had been over 20 reports to his office that night in reporting a UFO in the area. I wrote incident reports to the Sept, Boeing, Montana's state regarding the accident. But, what was interesting was I never heard anything from the Air Force regarding the incident, and I never had to, there was no retribution or reimbursement required from me for rolling this truck. And this truck had 18 miles on it that afternoon. It was a new truck. Okay, so nothing. I heard nothing. So this part was good because I didn't really want to buy the truck. I went back to my headquarters at Warren Air Force Base, and about a month and a half later I was discharged. I did not mention wrecking this truck up in Montana on one of my TDYs. They didn't ask me, and I didn't mention it. I didn't want to buy it. But I must say now, my 4 years that I had with this Geodetic Survey Squadron, I had worked on the latest missiles and aircraft in the U.S. Air Force inventory. And I worked everywhere on these guidance systems. And I never saw anything in the Air Force inventory that could perform like this UFO did. It's, I don't know what it was, but we sure didn't have any. I never saw anything like it. And I'd like to thank all of you for being here today, and thank the National Press Club. Hopefully someday we'll know in the near future that the government will perhaps release any information they have on UFOs. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bruce Fenstermacher. I don't have any exciting stories like rolling a truck with 18 miles on it. From 1974 to 1976, I was a combat crew commander and a captain in the Air Force stationed at F.E. Warren Air Force Base at the 400th SMS and assigned to Romeo Flight. In the fall of 76, my deputy, who I'll call Sam because he's not given me permission to release his name, we were on alert, trying to stay awake. We were listening to the conversation between the flight security controller of the topside NCO and the strategic alert team, the security alert team, the SATs. Kind of that was one way to stay alert, because the SAC duty is moments of terror with hours of boredom. And suddenly we heard the FSC call the SAT team and say, stop the vehicle. Get out of the vehicle and look around. I didn't tell them where to look or anything. And Sam and I looked at each other and then said, what do you see? And he said, oh, I don't see anything. I don't see anything. Holy bleep. I do see a white pulsating light in the sky. It's maybe 7 or 8 miles away. The FSC asked where it was. He said it's to the north. He said it's pretty close to where the launch control facility is. So my deputy and I did a double take. We called upstairs and we said, what's going on? He said, you're not going to believe this, Captain, but right above us there's a huge white thing, pulsating light above us, and I had to call them to make sure I wasn't seeing anything. Upon prodding, he told us it was shaped like a fat cigar. I think he said a pregnant cigar. White pulsating light. Between the pulsations, he saw red and blue lights. It was silent, because I prodded him saying, is it some for a helicopter? He said, no, it's very silent. We're talking to him for several minutes, and he says it's starting to move away along our access road. So we hung up. My deputy and I are saying, what do? We got to report this. He calls down, the FSC calls down shortly and says it's over one of our launch facilities, the missile silos, and it was the closest one along the access road. So I ordered the SAT team to go to that site. And they called in through the FSC, so they had to go back for batteries. And they were a little slow getting out, so I was kind of ordering them, come on, get on, get going. And at the same time, we contacted SAC command post at F.E. Warren. And the NCO answered, and we told him the story, and he laughed and said, when it eats the SAT team, call me back. So the SAT team never got to that LF. It silently moved again to another launch facility. We called the SAT team 3 or 4 times. I'm sorry, we called command post 3 or 4 times. The last time, and we got the same nonchalant attitude. The last time I said, are you logging this? And they said, no. So I said, give me the officer in charge. And he said, well, he's busy. I said, well, you either give me the officer in charge or I'm going to wake up the base commander, the squadron commander, because there's something going on, something's messing with my LFs. They were mine for that period. So the officer came on, and I said, you need to log this or I'll wake everybody up. He said he would. He called us, his NCO, a different NCO called